What we're going to do now is look at a simple platform tutorial. So I've just opened up my previous grid movement test room and modified it a little bit so it looks more like a platformer room. So I've got some steps here, I've got some bits that I can jump on and get all the way up to maybe an exit or something up here. It wouldn't be a very interesting game if I just had that, but we'll look at rooms and views and making them larger later on. Just want to be able to jump. I've created a new sprite, and this sprite I made it when I went new. I went 16 by 32, so it looks more like the shape of a player character rather than just a square. And I filled that with green. And I've created a new object. Now I'm just going to delete all this stuff because I'm going to work through it again. And this was just me working stuff out. Probably not the best way to do things. The only thing we need to be consistent about with our wall, or what we want our player to stand on, is it needs to be solid. We don't actually need any code for it or anything like that. It just needs to be solid. So that's that block there that we'd already made. We don't need these here, so we're just going to ignore them. And if they're in your room, make sure you remove them. And then we're going to go into here. Now we're going to add an event called a step event. And what the step event does is roughly 30 frames or 30 times per second in GameMaker, it's going to execute or run the actions that are in this step event. Now that can be increased to 60 or it can be decreased to 15, but the default speed that GameMaker runs at is 30 frames or 30 steps per second. So each time it's going to execute this. Now what we're going to do for the player is we need to make sure that when they're in the air they fall, and when they're on a platform they stop falling. So this is going to need a conditional statement. We're going to check to see if the place below them is empty. The way to check that the place below them is empty is by checking the space directly below them, relative to the player. So the relative button means that it's going to be directly below, X and Y in GameMaker are starting from the top left corner, X goes across and Y goes down. So if I go over to here, I'll just cancel that for a moment and go to my room. If you look down the bottom left corner here, you can see X is 0, Y is 448 at the moment because I'm pointing off the screen. But I go up the top left, X is 0, Y is 0. I move across, X is 32, Y is 0. The reason it's doing that is because I've got snap to grid on. 64, 96, 160, and as I go down, Y increases. So the 0, 0 starts in the top left corner and goes across, and the Y goes down. Unlike maths graphs where they start in the bottom left and go Y is positive and that way, and X is positive that way and Y is positive up. With this and pretty much any kind of program, it always starts in the top left, and X is positive to the right and Y is positive going down. So negative values will make something move up in this case along the Y axis. So we'll go back into here, and what I want to do is check to see if it's below this object, which is the green thing here. However, if I just type X check 0, 1 to see if that is free, that's going to be looking up in the top left corner, just 1 pixel down. But if I make it relative, it's going to be relative to this shape here. So if I want to check the position just below this object, well, X0, Y1 relative to this object is just 1 pixel below it. So relative means relative to this. If this was 0, 0, 1 pixel below that. So I'm going to check that. And so if that position is free, meaning they're not standing on anything, then I'm going to set the gravity. The gravity is going to be 270, so that's down if you remember from last time. The direction will be 270, and it will be 0.5. Now I don't want to tick the relative button here because I want to set this to an absolute value of 0.5. Otherwise it just kind of keeps increasing the gravity because it looks at it every step and goes, there's a gravity 0.5. Well, 0.5 relative to 0.5 is 1. And then 0.5 relative to 0.5 is 1.5. So it keeps on adding it. We don't want to tick that relative button. Now I'm going to put in an else statement. So if this is not true, meaning that they are standing on something, we're going to set the gravity to 0. So direction 270, gravity to 0. Now if we run this program now, you'll see that the player should fall, but they won't stop falling. And that's something that we need to change. Because at the moment, the gravity has changed. What's happening is the gravity, as it's working, it's changing their vertical speed. And when I get down here and set the gravity to 0, it doesn't actually reset the vertical speed to 0. That's weird. And so I want to make sure that that happens when they collide with the platform. So I'm going to add an event, collision, with the platform, the test wall. And I'm going to make sure, first of all, I'm going to move it to the contact position. That's because it might be moving too fast. We want to move it. Direction is going to be equal to direction. Maximum is going to be equal to, what will we make maximum? Maximum will be, I think, 12. But check. I think 12 is probably the right value. Let me just check. Yeah, 12 should be the right value. And then we want to make sure that against solid objects only. We don't want it moving against other things that we're going to put in the game later. So direction is direction. This means if it's falling down, it's going to move to the contact position down. If it touches it when it's on the left, it's just going to touch it on the left. And this is the maximum speed that it's going to move against it. It's a little bit hard to explain this, but you do need it in there, and you can test what happens without it, but it will look a little bit funny. And we're going to change the vertical speed to 0 after that. So as soon as it collides with the test wall, we're going to move to contact in the direction that it's traveling and set the vertical speed to 0. And then click OK to get rid of that. Next thing to do is to add our left and right keyboard. So add event keyboard right, and we may as well add in the jump as well, which can be control in this case. So left key, first of all, we need to make sure that the position is collision free. So we check to see if it's empty, and left is going to be -4. And the reason why it's going to be -4 is because we're going to move at 4 pixels at a time. And it's going to be relative. Right, we're going to put that in as well, except it's going to be 4 because X increasing, so it's going to check to the right relative of the object. If we go back to here, we're going to make it jump. So before we use these move fixed and move free, speed horizontal, but now we're going to jump to a position. Now left, we're going to jump to -4. So if that position was free, we're going to jump to it, and it's relative. Same with the right. So if the 4, 0 position is free, we're going to jump to it. This might sound a little bit weird, like it's jumping all over the place, but when you actually see it in action, it works really well. So I'll just move this up. Left, right, fall down, fall down. You see it works really quite well. It actually looks like it's moving. Even though it's just repositioning that object multiple times, 30 times a second, looks like it's moving quite fast. And the last bit was add event keyboard control. Now this one we're going to need to check. Is it on the ground? And we want to check the position just below it. If there is collision at the position, then we're going to set the vertical speed to -8. -8 will just give it some lift. So there's my jump. But notice how if I push control, it only jumps when I'm on the ground. I can't do like a massive double jump. But I can go left. I can jump up these steps. I can jump over there. And that looks like it's a pretty good jump height as well. So that's all working. Once I get down here though, I'm stuck. I can't get out. Now here's where I'm going to do a double jump. So this is a bit odd, but I'm going to add an event called a create event. And what I'm going to do is create a variable in here. Now a variable can be called anything I want, and I'm going to make this one called can double jump. I might just spell the whole thing, can double jump. It's either going to be 0 or 1. When it starts, I'm going to check it to 0. So they can't double jump when the game starts. In the step event, down further, so after this stuff works, I'm going to check, is there a collision at 1 below the object relative? Now this is unrelated to the stuff above it, so I might put a comment in between it. Comment, check for double jump reset. Okay. So if there is a collision below the object, then what I'm going to do is I'm going to set this variable can double jump to 1. Now when I do control, I'm going to check if there is a collision at a position, do that. Else, I'm going to check my variable, can double jump. If it's equal to 1, then I'm going to set the vertical speed to -8 again. Now I'll just break this down into blocks so it's a bit easier to see. So what's happening here, if there is a collision at a position, do this. Else, meaning that they're in the air, well, is double jump equal to 1? Yes. Set the vertical speed to 0, and then I'm going to set can double jump to 0. So they can only do one double jump. However, when they are then colliding with the ground again, they'll be able to do another one. Programming, there's a lot of problem solving, and there's probably multiple ways to do this. So you see, didn't actually work, but I'll figure it out in a minute. So I might just pause the video here. Okay, I figured out what the problem was. Initially, I had this set to keyboard control, and what that does is it checks to see if it's constantly being pushed. And so even though I just tapped it, it's still probably registered 3 or 4 times. And so it would have jumped in the air, then immediately checked if they can double jump, set it to 0, so they wouldn't have been able to. But if I change this to keyboard key press control, it only checks the first one. Only the first one registers. So if I want to do it again, I've got to push it again. And here's where I can get my double jump working now. So I jump down here. Oh, it's still not high enough. I might be able to get out. No, I'm still rubbish. If I change the value, maybe play around with this value here. Set the speed to -10 and the jump speed here to -10. It's much higher now, but I can do a big double jump. So even a small value like changing it from -8 to -10 changes the way it jumps. I can pretty much jump all the way up there from there. So that does work though. I'm going to stop the video here if you're happy with that, and now I'm going to do it in code. So if you're happy, you can stop the video here. If you want to know how to do it in code, look on. Now there's lots of different ways to do this. So the way that I do it might not be the most efficient. I'm going to basically be translating the drag and drop stuff into code bit by bit. So you can see here I've duplicated it. I've called it platformer code. I'm just going to go in and pretty much delete everything that's in here. And that will do for now. I'm going to make sure I put my platform code guy in here so that when I test the room, he's going to come up. I'm going to open up both of these objects, mainly because I'm going to need this one to look on to it with. So first we're going to have a create event. So add event, create, and control, drag that code in. It's going to ask me what the code is. I'm just going to type in can double jump equals 0. I'm pretty sure if you want, no, you can't type that. Okay, so can double jump equals 0. I just name the variable and I assign it a value. So it's going to be equal to 0. I could say equal to false. I think it might be lowercase. Yep, equal to false. I might do it that way instead. So can double jump equal false with a little f. This is a type of data. It's basically the same as me putting in 0, but I think it's more readable. So can double jump is equal to false. Then we go to the step event. Create step. And I drag this code in here. And I'm gonna need my if a position is collision free. So if place underscore empty or free, and that's going to be the position directly below it. So I'm just going to use the x value of the object. It's going to be y plus 1. So that makes it relative. If I just type in 1, that's going to refer to the absolute value up in the corner. But if I type y plus 1, this x and y variable, they are the x and y of the object. So wherever that object is, its current position. So if that's free, let's see, set gravity. I'll just guess this. Gravity, yep. Gravity equals, we'll have to check this, so have a look in the help. We go search, gravity, I haven't used GameMaker code for a while. Gravity, and then we'll look down here. Unfortunately, that doesn't show me the GML of it. Oops. Oh, here we go. Gravity and gravity direction. Okay, so gravity equals 0.5 and gravity underscore, I would have seen that, equals 270, which is down. So that's that first bit there. But what happens if this is not empty? So I can put comments in here to make this a bit more readable. If the place below the player is empty, else the place below the player must not be empty. We're going to do this stuff here. And in this case, gravity equals 0.0. Gravity equals 0. So that's it there. Now I will come back and do this bit later on with the jumping. So we'll come back and edit that later on. We'll just get it working bit by bit. Now the collision with the object wall, it's probably best just to do this like this still, because typing it up is a bit odd. So we're just going to use the same thing. Move to contact position, direction, 12 against solid only, and set the vertical position to 0. Now if I run this, I should see the player should just fall down and stop. Okay, so we've got that part working without a problem. So let's do the left key. Actually, we can do that all in this here. Now we could do it in this script here, or we could add a separate script. It doesn't really matter. So I could add a separate one. You probably don't want to use too many, because all it says is execute a piece of code, and it doesn't actually tell you what that piece of code does. So I'm only going to use 2 here. If place free, and this one's going to be x minus 4, y. Move should be, oh no, that's a bit weird, sorry. What I need to do is x equals x minus 4. I could do y equals y, but that's not going to change. And then secondly, if place underscore free x plus 4 y, x equals x plus 4. So this is the same as that move jump command. So jump to position -40. This is just changing the x value of the current object to whatever the x value is -4. So if the x is 32, x minus 4 is 28. So that's what the new x value of the object will be. And this one's going the other way. However, I don't have any kind of condition here. So what I need to do is if place free and keyboard check. Keyboard check VK left. So if both of these conditions are true, this is an AND statement. It means that both of these conditions must be true. I can also type it in as A and D. Keyboard check, VK right. So if you prefer to use A and D, you can do that as well. So that is the left and right command. And now I should be able to move left and right, hopefully. So I can go left, I can go right, falls down, not a problem. Last thing to do is the jump. I might just put all of this in one script actually. And I'll keyboard controls. If place free. I'm going to check below it this time. So this time here we're going to be doing this bit. So I'll just exit out of there. We're going to be doing this bit of code. And this bit here, if place free, we want to check below. If place meeting, x, y plus 1, solid objects. So this one here, if there is a collision, set the vertical speed. I think it's v speed. Yep, v speed equals v equals -8. And I better make sure I put the keyboard command in there, and keyboard check vk underscore control. I put that around the wrong way. Okay, v speed equals -8. So now I should be able to move. Now I haven't implemented the double jump yet, but if I push control, I can jump, and it works really well. Okay, so that's working fine. Let's go back into here, we'll implement that double jump. And this is where I need... Okay, it's a good idea. In fact, it's essential for you to do this. You need to be able to code comment in order to actually get achieved. So, and you don't have to use those code comments. You can use the exclamation marks that are in here, which I'll show you in a sec. Else, and I'll just go back to here, else, if can double jump, then what I'm going to do, if Devin can double jump equals true. These little braces here are kind of like these blocks. So they tell it what's going to happen if something is true. So if can double jump equals true, I've used two equal signs here to compare. This will assign a value and this will compare a value. So if can double jump is equal to true, then we are going to v speed equals -8, can double jump equals false. And notice I'm only using one equals here because I'm assigning it the value of false. Now finally, reset double jump, and I can probably actually do that right here. So right here, I can reset can double jump equals true, because that's when the space below the player is not empty. So I can just reset it at that same time. So let's go back into here and we'll check. Might not work, in which case I'll debug it. It's bouncing. That's interesting. Okay, why is it bouncing? That's weird. And keyboard check. Oh, alright, so here's the condition here. I'd made it constantly, if this statement was not true, which means if I wasn't even pushing the button, it was still going to jump. So this is where I need to put in else if place, so I need a second condition, x, y plus 1, solid, and keyboard underscore check vk control. But now I'm going to change this to not. So in other words, it's in the air and I'm pushing control. If can double jump equals true, so this will work here. So I can have this exclamation mark kind of reverses the statement. So this says if it's true, if I'm standing on solid ground. This says if I'm not standing on solid ground. Okay. Now I'm getting the same problem that I had before in that I need to change these. Instead of keyboard check here, it should be keyboard check underscore pressed, I think. Yeah. Keyboard check underscore pressed. Let's bring that across. So now it only counts that first button push. And I can do that double jump. And still can't get up on there. Now, you can use negative values here. So I could go 8.5 is probably just enough. Sorry, decimal values I meant. So 8.5 is just going to give it that little extra speed boost when I'm going up. And I should be able to jump up now. Yeah, there we go. So this is all prototyping. Making sure that you get your values right, making sure that you get the feel of the game right. And there is a little issue that happens when I hit the roof. Kind of like my head gets caught. Not a big deal, and you might not worry about it. But everything kind of feels right. You might want to test the speed. So you notice here I've not done any graphics whatsoever. I'm just getting it to work. It's pretty ugly graphics at the moment. Next thing we're going to do is look at top-down kind of racing airplane controller. And that's going to be fairly straightforward, I think.